Great skills again by him. Oh, marvellous goal by Lewis.
Welcome to the Rangers Journey.
Well, welcome back to the Rangers Journal. I'm Scotty, and today we're putting the spotlight on a man right at the centre of the Rangers attack right now, Ryan Naderi. A £4.5 million move from Hansa Rostock in January. A striker brought in to deliver goals to be the difference maker. But here's the truth, he's still waiting on his first league goal in a Rangers shirt. It's not for a lack of effort. Naderi's been leading the line alongside Yusuf Shamiti, working hard, pressing defenders, making runs, linking play, and doing a lot of the unseen work off the ball. But as a partnership, it's just not clicking. The chemistry's not right there. The chances aren't falling, and the goals, they're still missing. Which makes it even more puzzling when you look at his record. 13 goals for Hansa Rostock earlier this season. 10 for Borussia Mönchengladbach, 2 before that. So what's going wrong? Is it a system? Is it a partnership with Shamiti? Or is Naderi doing everything right except getting in the box? Because at Rangers, effort levels are respected, but goals are what define you. So today, what's the question? We ask a question, Ryan Naderi. Misfiring striker or a player on the brink of turning it all round? And tonight I'm delighted to be joined by Doug. Doug, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thanks. So happy to be here and have a wee chat about our new signing.
It's we'll just start off. What's your opinion on Naderi so far, Doug? How do you think he's settled in?
I think he's settled in okay. He looks like he's a decent player. Obviously, he's got a couple of things to work on. I always expected it would take a little bit of time. He's stepping up a level, obviously, from the lower divisions in Germany. Although there's still a relatively decent, it's a decent level of quality still, German football, regardless. But I do think, there has been an increase in discussion around him recently because he hasn't kind of been scoring the goals that I think, obviously, we were looking for. Fans were looking for that striker that was going to score for us week to week. Because I think a lot of our competitors have a player like that. Hearts have got Shankland, Celtic have got Naderi, Motherwell have got Mastroianni. So we were kind of looking for that player because as much as Chermiti had improved, he's got a knack of scoring 2-3 goals, in these big games, but he doesn't score in the other ones. But as we'll go on to discuss, I think Naderi's settled in well. I think he's playing well, but he's not being used in the way that's going to result in the goals that I think fans were wanting him to be scoring.
Aye, definitely. I've done a wee bit of a background on him at a minute, and it's just looking him up on the internet. And he grew up in Dresden, started his football journey playing for SG Dresden. Sorry if my German's crap. And that was for kids in Dresden before moving to the youth academy of Dynamo Dresden in 2015. Played 2 seasons in the under-17 Bundesliga and in the under-19 Bundesliga in 2020-2021. In 2021-2022, he moved to Borussia Mönchengladbach, where he played in the West Division of the under-19 Bundesliga. Never made his debut for Borussia... Oh, sorry. He made his debut for Borussia Mönchengladbach 2 in the 2021-2022 season, where he came on as a substitute in a home match against Schalke's reserve team. He was never included in the Bundesliga squad. So when he moved to Hansa Rostock at the end of August 2024, he made his professional debut in a home game. It finished in a 1-1 draw. Came on as a substitute in the 59th minute. A week later, Naderi scored his first goal for Hansa Rostock in an away game against his former club, Dynamo Dresden. And that was a 1-1 draw. He finished 5th with Hansa and won some cup I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name of, after scoring 2 goals in a 4-2 away game over Victoria Köln. He was voted player of the match day 12 and 25-26 and in a 4-0 win over Waldorf Meinheim. He collected a hat-trick of assists during this game. Now, that's quite interesting reading that he's collected a hat-trick of assists. Now, before he signed, there was an awful lot brought up about his goal contributions, but I think Rangers fans were looking more at the goals scored rather than the assists.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the big focus in January when we were looking at strikers. We were, as I said, we needed that striker and we need a striker that could score week to week. For lack of a better, I've said it before and gotten flack, and I'll say it again. We kind of needed a Dessers back. Dessers, for all the chances he would miss and frustrations that he would bring, Dessers scored, week on week most of the time. He scored against every team in the league in his 2 years with us. Obviously hitting 20 plus goals in both seasons, and that was what we needed, that type of player that could come in and complement what was there and provide that regularity, because that's what we're missing. And we've got these 12 draws, quite a lot of them sort of 1-1s as well. And a big reason for that is that lack of clinical finishing. And that player that, as I say, will just get those goals that will turn those draws into the victory. So that's what we were looking for. So that was the big focus of what people were looking at when we were, obviously, Naderi's name came into it. But, he has a player that can assist as well. He got, with his 8 goals this season with Hansa, he also got 4 assists. Albeit three of them were in his last game with them when he got 3 assists. But that doesn't surprise me, having now seen him obviously play more with us, because again, he's quite good at a lot of the supportive aspects, and I think over the course of time he'll start to get assists for us as well.
Aye, definitely. I think there needs to. Let's look at the factor of him settling in just now. Then he's came from a different country. He is 21 years old. He's came for a big fee. I think he's done all right, considering. I don't think it's fair to lump all the expectation on his shooters, although we paid a big fee for him. We should take on that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've ended up paying extra to get him in January, and more money always adds a little bit of expectation. So I think we were paying about 3 million in the initial sort of agreed deal that would have brought him here in the summer, and we've pushed that out to 5 in order to get him. So obviously Hansa, he was their main striker, so they didn't want to get rid of him. So that's fine. No qualms with them pushing that. But it does add that little extra pressure on, like you say. That was the thing with Trimiti as well. He came in for a big fee, and so there was big pressure straight away. And so that again has heaped on the pressure, and the fact that any player that. One of the big things I think that's adding to the pressure is I feel like there's a lot of people comparing him to Massimiliano, because a lot of people wanted us to go and buy Massimiliano, because they were going, look at this guy, he's scoring all the time for Motherwell, we should be buying him. And there's this whole sort of, he's shown it in the league, he's proven that he'll score goals sort of thing. And there is an element to that. Yes, obviously being in the league, having played the teams already, there would be a level of that. But I think you still have to remember that playing for Rangers is not the same as playing for Motherwell. The pressure at Rangers is not the same as the pressure at Motherwell. And even if you brought in a player from the league, they still have to adapt to that change and that pressure, and the way that teams play against us. So I think even if we'd got in, a Massimiliano to play as a striker, that he just still had to settle in as well. And I think we're seeing that, as I say, Naderi is settling in, and as I say, I think he settled well. He settled better than, for example, Alston, who is not hitting his heights right. Yeah, I think we're getting much better performances out of Naderi. Our left side right now has been really good to watch. Maybe not quite as effective as we want it to be yet, but it's been really good, and that's been because of the signings of Romans, the way we're using Moore, and then the signing of Naderi and Chikwani. Those 4 in particular, I think, are playing really well in combination down the left. So in terms of settling in, I think he's settled in well. Again, the problem is just that he's doing things well, but he's not doing what fans wanted a new striker to be doing, and so that's keeping that kind of pressure on him.
So Doug, that brings us on to how Danny Roll's using him then. He's using him as a kind of, I don't want to use the Kenny Miller comparison. Okay, but the trick is with Boyd and Miller was Miller done all the running and Boyd stuck at the back of the net. And Naderi is dropping off quite a bit. With it also looks, people are going on about his 4-2-2-2, but to me at times it looks in transition as if Naderi's sitting in a 10. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, definitely. There's an element of that. Like you say, he's doing a lot more of the deeper leg work than Chermiti, and Chermiti will be the one that's tending to be more up top. Although Chermiti still roams a little in and of himself, which I think is a slight issue for us. I'll bring up this. This is a good point for this slide, I think, actually. I'll bring up for looking at their movements. So this is our last 4 league games: so St Mirren, Celtic, Livingston, and Hearts. The Livingston game, Naderi came on as a sub later on in the match. He started the other 3. And I mean, if you can see that Naderi's maps are all on the left hand side, and you see there's a lot of work in that kind of middle of the pitch, all across the sides, right to left. But on all 3, movement either on the left side or on one side of the pitch, he's not spending huge amounts of time just up in the box. You can see against St Mirren, Chermiti spent a bit more time in the box, but I mean against Celtic, Chermiti is on the edge of the box, but so is Naderi, sort of along that edge of the box kind of area. They're both a bit more up top against Livingston, where we played the one up front, so you can see they're both a bit more focused in the box there. And they do have a little bit more focus in the box against Hearts, as well as being all around the pitch. Chermiti in particular, in that game, he was all over because he had a great game that day. But I don't think it's a surprise that the game where they're both focused in the box, we scored the most amount of goals. That's not necessarily goals coming from them, but it's an issue. I think that like I said, we wanted a striker who was going to come in and score goals, and it's harder to score goals if you're not in the box. So, like I say, the St Mirren one in particular, Naderi's hottest spots is out wide on the right, out wide on the left, and then sort of pretty much bang in the centre circle. Because, like you say, he's dropping into this area to help the midfield, doing work with the players on the wings. So that puts the onus then on, if he's going to be out in these other areas, then that leaves the onus on Chermiti to primarily be the goal scorer. And as I think we've kind of gotten by this point, he's not quite, he's not a regular goal scorer, Chermiti. He kind of tends to go from either world-class overhead kicks or and playing like he did against Hearts or indeed against Celtic, or he's just kind of running about, putting in a reasonable shift in terms of effort, like he did against St Mirren and Livingston, but not scoring goals. And so we end up with this slightly odd position where I don't think our strikers are spending enough time just being strikers in the box, and need a bit more support around them from the midfield players, from the wingers, so that they can do that. We had a little bit of a similar problem, I felt, sometimes back when we had Morelos as well, because Morelos liked to roam, and he would do really well interchanging with players. So there was often times where we had no one in the box because Morelos would be out maybe doing 1-2s with Kent or whatever. And I would find sometimes there'd be a winger in a position to cross, but with no one to cross to, which is why I like players like Scott Arfield, who would make those kind of late runs into the box. So I think while he's been active and involved in the play, and if we bring up this second slide with some of his actual stats, you can see if you look at the sort of the bottom right-hand side of this, where you've got things like tackles, interceptions, clearances, and recoveries, he's putting up good numbers in a lot of these things. So I've got his percentiles. So for clearances, he's in the 92nd percentile for strikers, 84th percentile for interceptions, 72 or 72nd percentile for touches. So he's getting more touches, he's got more tackles, more interceptions, more clearances than most strikers do. And that's because he's dropping and getting involved in the game and doing all these things. His passing is up there in the 80th percentile, so he's passing better than most strikers as well. Again, he's involved in the game. So he's doing good things, and these are obviously all high numbers in terms of he's doing better than most strikers for these things. But then you're looking at the left-hand side, and he's played 8 games. He's only got 2 goals. And both of them are in that one cup game against a lower opposition side. So, as I say, I think he's playing well for what we have him doing and what role has him doing in that deeper dropping off role. But the problem is that, as I say, what fans wanted and what we, I think, needed was a striker that was going to come in and score goals week to week to turn these draws into wins, because that would give us the best chance of winning the league. And as I say, he's not doing that right now. So as much as he's, I think, doing well, and he will probably still improve because obviously he's still a young player, I still think we've seen in recent years with certain players that if we do give them a bit of time when they show the signs of that they've got positive play, for example, Cherney started off slowly and then really kicked on. Raskin started slowly, then kicked into a good vein of form. If we have players that, if we're doing this, buying these young players in, we need to give them that time to settle to then get to their best. And I feel like he's showing signs that he will do that. The problem is that might come next season when he's had a bit of time and he's settled, and maybe Roll has a bit more time to put more around him. The problem was we needed a striker in January that was going to affect the team straight away. And while he is doing that, it's not necessarily in the way that we need, which is goals.
I want to quickly jump back to this because I'm looking at like St. Mirren. It looks as if he's dropping far, far too deep for me there. Shamiti's obviously more in the box. When I'm looking at the Celtic game, it's pretty much the same again, except you could probably accuse both the strikers of not being in the box enough. Livingston, I'm purely putting that down to the fact that we were chasing a winner, which is why we were chasing the game the whole match, which is why they seem to be in the box a lot more, although Naderi is right mid quite a bit of the time. Shamiti is red hot in the centre of the goal. And then, like he says, against Hearts, we played their best game of the season. Home and away in the league and in Europe. It was our best performance, and we've not been able to recreate that since, but I think that's just how Hearts played against us that day. They were banked in, but they're also trying to take a game 2 at the same time on the counter-attack. It's really, really interesting stuff in terms of his stats. He's got the raw physical attributes. He's got good... he's got a good kind of graph in the middle there, which tells you how much he's actually doing for the team. But the problem is, he's not in the box enough for me. I've whipped up some of his goals here. I'm just going to share his screen 2 minutes. And we can look at where he actually scored goals for Hansa before he signed. Share. Right, now I just need to pass on. And just a wee shout out to Rain of Goals for this video. So first goal, he's in the box. Second goal in the box. Third goal, 6-yard box. 6-yard box again. Obviously gets a break of the ball there. It's a good finish. Starts outside the box, comes in the box, scores. Scramble, weathers it into the back of the net. Team again, that's a great finish, that one. Danger for a set piece. Diving header, great finish again. Now, obviously, this is a Bundesliga 3, but in terms of levels, there is going to be a bit of a difference. This is probably going to be his work outside the box coming up. What he brings in terms of assists. Flick going to the back post for his strike partner. And that is it. I'm just going to stop sharing now. So, a lot of his stuff tells you that when he is in the box, he's a good finisher. That's pretty much what I take for that here, Doug.
Yeah, there was a good selection of goals there as well. Yeah, he scored with his head, scored with his feet, some difficult touches as well, and sort of tight goals from when he's got players around him in tight spaces, which is something you'll find with playing with us and packed defences. So, I mean, I think that shows the ability. And like you say, he needs to be in the box to be able to take these chances. And I kind of feel like a bit more often than not, right now, he's the one that's involved in the build up to the chance rather than being the focal point to finish the chance, which I think is more of what he did with Hansa. Whereas, like you say, and particularly that Samarin game, if he's dropping all the way into the midfield, then he's going to be involved in the build up rather than the finishing. And the other thing, if you're going to have one of your strikers doing that, which is fine, you need other players to support an attack, and you see that in a few of those games, goals were coming from other players. So like Livingston, obviously, was it Moore and Fernandez. So if we're going to see him score more goals, then we need to provide a platform for him to do that, and part of that needs to be that he has license to spend more time up front a bit more. So it'll be interesting to see, particularly next season, because I kind of feel like, I think I said it on one of the pods last week, I kind of feel like Roll has perhaps gotten the best he can out of the squad he has available to him right now, or certainly that he maybe thinks that, and there's certain players that he doesn't think can give him much more, which is why, for example, we're not seeing Miovski much right now. And he's maybe waiting a bit longer to make certain substitutes. So if he gets to obviously make more changes in the summer, bring in new players that he likes and he wants, then we maybe get to see an adjustment in how some of the players play. And that's when we'll maybe get to see more from Naderi as an attacking threat. The only other option is that he decides to put Naderi up top himself and either has Chumiti drop or he plays someone else and maybe does do the more traditional 10. But that would seem going back to the kind of 4-3-1, which, as I say, we played that formation for a few years and not really had much luck with it. One of the things I've liked about Roll is that he has tried different formations and different systems, and the 4-2-2-2 is a bit different. But it does have that. It does leave that space kind of in the sort of very middle of the pitch, just behind the goalkeepers, where the players need to move into. So it does require movement and clever movement from the team. So if like Moore, I think he wants Moore and Gassama, if we use them as examples from the last game, if they're sort of on either wing, he wants them to move it into that central area, and which narrows up, because that, I think that's why he plays Gassama on the right, despite the fact that we know he's been better from the left, because he wants him cutting inwards. But I'm not quite sure if Gassama's, to be honest, got the game smarts for it yet, because he just doesn't seem to be effective from that side in the slightest. Whereas, you've got Romans who can bomb up the pitch. So as Moore drops in and Naderi drops back, you've got Romans pushing right up in a real attacking formation, and Shakwani coming out a little bit. So that's that, as I said, that little kind of foursome of players who are playing really effectively. Whereas on your right side, you've either got Sterling, who's less adventurous. He still gets up, but he's not a super attack minded player. Right. So he's either more defensive or less adventurous. Or you've got Tav, who is maybe a little less positionally astute. So you say he'll move all over the place. But because he's not sort of bombing up, you've then not got the same option that he seems to like to have Raskin push up and create width, or he certainly did in the Samarin game anyway, in the first half. So there's a different dynamic working there, which again I think is why we're seeing a lot of the attacking coming from the left. And similarly, when Skovåsen came on after, he's not offering the best. He was a bit better than Gassama, but he's not giving the best either. So I think because we've not got a player in that sort of right wing area that's really sort of firing on all cylinders, it's, as I say, creating a right side that's just a bit ineffective because you've got a sort of a void where there's not much going on. Whereas on the left, the players are really engaged, moving well together, and you're getting a lot of creative play out of that. But part of that creative play is, obviously Naderi dropping, which is, as I say, leading to what we're seeing at the moment with him not getting the goals.
It's weird. I think Naderi would be a better striker through the middle on his own. Dropping off, getting the ball wide, and then getting on the end of crosses. It's basic logic to me. But I think we're persisting with Shamiti because we've paid £9 million for him, which is the sad aspect of that deal at the end of the day. I don't think Shamiti is anywhere near what we need up front. He's got his moments. He's a moments player for me. He went through a spell earlier on in the season, probably just at the turn of the year, where he was playing up front himself and he was winning flick-ons. He was being a lot more physical with defenders. Then I just dropped off. It's completely disappeared off the face of the earth. So you've not even got that work rate from him that we did have. And it's been since Naderi's come into the fold. So it's an interesting combination. Whether it's one that's going to work and win as a league, I've got very strong doubts about that, if I'm being honest. I don't think there's enough goals there, not from Naderi, but from Naderi and Shamiti as a two. I think you've got a finisher that, even on Sunday there was opportunities in behind that we could have got at St Mirren, and Majowski's perfect at playing off the shoulder. We didn't put Majowski on early enough for me. But hey ho, I suppose that's kind of where we're at. And John's come in with a wee bit about Skov Olsen. I understand where you're coming from, John. He says we need to get off Olsen's back. He's not even up to full match fitness. Still contributed in 4 goals. Need to keep him in the team and playing. I agree with that in that sense, but I would disagree with signing him just now in the summer for £8-9 million because he's not showing anywhere near that he's an £8 or £9 million player. He was supposed to come in and date for a start. He's had a run of 5 to 7 appearances now. He should be up to some kind of form, and he isn't. He isn't for me, and him starting on the bench on Sunday told me that Danny Rowe probably feels the same way. Doug, we're probably going to shut that off there. Have you got any kind of closing thoughts on Ryan Naderi and how we can get him scoring goals? Is it just by putting him in the box more often?
Well, I think going back to John, the comment he made before that one as well is a good one, where he's talking about here not crossing the ball, and I totally agree with that. We've got a really big team now. One of the things that we saw Danny Rowe do with his January signings was bring in strength. Robbins, Chikwani, maybe a little less Olsen, but Naderi as well. Big lads, strong lads, because that was something that we criticised about the team. I don't think we're making enough of that. We've done it to a certain degree at times where our set pieces have improved, but I think we need to cross the ball more and open play. The cup quarter final, I think, is a perfect example, because the moment Tavernier came on the pitch and started just whipping balls in, we were getting chances. There was one particular for Chimiti that he should probably have scored. He very at least should have got on target. But to me, it was just it was an immediate and clear difference, because that's something that Tav does. You will put balls in, and I don't think we really have many other players that, although Tav's on the down, he still has that technical quality. And I don't think we've got a lot of players that have a similar level of technical quality in terms of putting in the ball. Raskin can do it. I think we saw that against St Mirren in the first half. I thought Raskin was really good in that first half because he was playing a little bit more like an 8. He was a little bit more attacking, and he was getting balls in, and obviously we get a goal from a ball in from him. So I think we need to do a little bit more of that. And then, just like you say, get the two of them, Chimiti and Naderi, in the box. Because if you've got 2 big lads in the box and you can throw in a quality ball, then that's something for defences to think about. So if you can mix that in with the other good play that we do, again, you're going to make teams have to think about what they're doing defence-wise, and that can help to lead you to goals if you're mixing things up and giving them different problems to solve.
100%, mate. 100%. I think going forward for till the end of the season, I think we need to ditch what we're trying to do and basically do what you're saying. I completely agree. Is have to have in the park when match fitness and breaks and whatever allows them to, so that we've got that accomplished crosser of the ball. Romans is providing a different threat for the other side. But we didn't get their balls into the box. I mean, Naderi and Shamiti are both 6 foot plus. They're big guys. It's common logic. It really is common logic. I'm going to wrap up there. This podcast was brought to you by good guys over at Bluebell's Bar, the only Rangers bar in Porta del Carmen. If you're in, head on in, say hello to Ken and the team. Every Rangers game on show, plus other fitbats, a good atmosphere. Tell them a journal sent you, and they'll look after you. But Doug, thank you for joining me, mate.
No problem. Always good to talk about the Rangers, even when it's about the frailties.
Aye, I know. We're just trying to think of relatable content just now, because we've got no midweek games. The weeks are getting longer and longer to me. They're absolutely brutal just now without Rangers having a midweek game. But apart from that, if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. With the game review on last night, so head on over, watch that, get a wee like, and hit the hype button if you can. We'll be back tomorrow night. I think it's a Q&A with the guys. And remember, every night is a Rangers Journal night. Good night.